If you cannot separate the man from the money, separate the money from the man.
If you cannot separate the man from the money, separate the money from the man.
It has been my personal pleasure to work on a daily basis with Suge Knight.
I always felt that David Kenner was for David Kenner.
David Kenner was the shadow who was always at death row. He was the one who was making deals. David Kenner was running it from the start. He was always there. He's a very, very thorough lawyer. He really knows his business, but I wouldn't say that he's a righteous person.
When I left death row, David Kenner took my job at an astronomical salary. From a business standpoint, he was ruthless.
By the late 80s, David Kenner has built up his reputation as a top criminal defense attorney and also worked on CIA and the Mafia cases. Around the same time, Suge Knight built his reputation as a stand-up guy in the music industry and also started bodyguarding and managing artists. Somewhere around 1990, through mutual contacts in the LA criminal defense world and the music industry sphere, Suge Knight and David Kenner crossed paths. Kenner at the time was a well-known criminal defense lawyer in Los Angeles, known for defending wealthy or high-profile defendants, including some with gang ties. And Suge was an upcoming artist manager with a reputation for violence who needed legal connections if he was to go anywhere further in the music business. Suge had the street muscle behind him, but he needed the legal muscle, and David Kenner was the perfect man for the job. So Suge Knight having cases against him already, he hires Kenner to represent him. Suge, planning to found a record label, sees the value in Kenner's reach and connections, and Kenner sees the money potential in Suge Knight's vision. Soon enough, they become very close to each other. Kenner, who was Harry O's attorney already, introduces Suge Knight to Harry during a prison visit.
Michael Paris, better known as Harry O, was probably the most formidable and certainly the most charismatic gangster, black gangster anyway, that LA has ever seen. Even in prison, he was able to reach out and cast Denzel Washington in his first significant acting role. So the guy had connections.
This is Mr. Harris.
Good morning, sir.
Hey, good morning.
Were you business associates with Suge Knight and David Kenner in the formation of Death Row Records?
They worked in conjunction with me. Actually, it was valued at $500 million.
And how much money would that have been for you?
At least $125 million.
So it was about money.
It's about money. It's always about money with these guys.
Suge presents his plan to Harry and asks him to be 50% partner for $1 million. Harry agrees to fund the company but restructures the plan to a new entertainment company under the name Godfather Entertainment, and the record label would be one of its subsidiaries under GF Entertainment. The record label's original name was Funky Enough Records, then Future Shock Records, which was ultimately called Death Row Records. They plan out everything and set the plan in motion in 1991.
GF Entertainment is a multimedia company. We have Death Row Records, we have a movie production unit, concerts, we're going to be doing pay-per-view concerts, and all kinds of exciting things. The label started with Dr. Dre, who was going to do his own thing, and with a lot of help from Suge Knight and Harry O and a number of people, and we got it all together.
By 1995, Death Row Records was experiencing immense commercial success, generating millions in revenue. This success was largely fueled by the release of hit albums The Chronic and Doggy Style. But none of that would be possible if Kenner failed to defend Snoop in his murder trial in 1993.
We, the jury in above entitled action, find the defendant, Calvin Brodus, not guilty of the crime of murder in the first degree.
David Kenner, you know what I'm saying, put on the bomb case. Donald Ray, Marshall Morrissey, Paul Palladino, the whole dream team. They did what they were supposed to do, and they gave the baton to the jury, and I couldn't do nothing but just bank on them.
David Kenner was so valuable to Death Row because he was able to keep these artists out of jail.
That could be used either way.
His performance earned admiration in legal circles for dismantling the prosecution's timeline. Kenner was more than a lawyer. He had input on business moves, negotiated with distributors, and even had access to master recordings. His reach made him the second most powerful man at death row behind Suge. In the beginning, Kenner was very loyal to Suge. He created contracts that gave Suge Knight control while locking in the artists under tight terms and sometimes concealed terms in legal loopholes of the contracts in favor of Suge and Death Row, so that the artists couldn't fully understand what they were signing. Often described as Suge Knight's consigliere, David Kenner was a vital cog in the Death Row machine. Riding the waves of success and money flowing in from all sides, Suge wanted to cut off Harry O from Death Row, and he needed David's support since David initially represented Harry's interests in the company.
Supposedly, David Kenner put something in Harry O's soda when he went to use the restroom, or when he wasn't at the table where the visit was, and Harry O almost passed away. Like something happened to him. He got poisoned or something, yeah. He had to go to the infirmary in there, almost died, had to learn how to walk again, all type of crazy shit as a result of a visit with David Kenner or something like that.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Suge Knight and David Kenner teamed up and cut off Harry O from the deal and stopped answering his calls. Suge was the face of intimidation, but Kenner was the legal chain behind the scary Death Row reputation. Legally masterful, always steps ahead, calculated in speech and tone, knows how to bend the system without breaking it. David Kenner worked for David Kenner in the first place, but also was loyal to a higher power which benefited him. In this case, Suge Knight. Loyalty isn't an emotional act in David's viewpoint, it's a strategic move. He's loyal to whoever holds power or signs the checks. Kenner, being the shadow man at Death Row, always kept a low profile, but at the same time never lost leverage when the deal goes down. In 1995, Suge Knight posts a $1.4 million bail for the release of Tupac Shakur, as he saw Tupac's immense potential way before and also sees him as the final missing piece of his Death Row empire. David Kenner orchestrates the 3-album deal between Death Row and Tupac in exchange for his bail money and effectively becomes Tupac's lawyer in the process. On the other hand, Dre never trusted Kenner in the first place, and with the increasing gang presence and shady business tactics at Death Row Records, Dre leaves Death Row on March 22, 1996. In a short time span, Suge Knight and Tupac become very close friends, and in a way Pac overshadows and takes Snoop's #1 artist spot and David Kenner's right-hand man spot at the same time. This creates tensions, and all kinds of rumors start circling around. Pac was aware of David Kenner and his power and influence, but he didn't trust him and suspected he was possibly working against his interests. So he fired David Kenner as his lawyer. Days later, Tupac and Suge get shot. Tupac passed away from gunshot wounds in '96, and Suge goes to prison in 1997 for probation violation charges.
One of the things that puzzles me is how Kenner was able to help Snoop beat that murder rap. Yet Suge Knight ends up with a 9-year prison sentence. Why wasn't his attorney Kenner able to help him beat that parole violation that would land Suge Knight behind bars for 9 years? Was it because it was to his advantage not to?
Orlando Anderson wasn't taken downtown. The only person who suffered because of that MGM footage was Suge Knight. Suge Knight went to jail for probation violation.
After Suge went to prison, Kenner allegedly took increased control over Death Row's operations. While the record label was crumbling, rumors claimed that he sold off rights and publishing or assets behind Suge's back. After Tupac died, Kenner allegedly gained access to unreleased material and publishing rights. There are rumors he negotiated deals independently or misrepresented who owned materials in an attempt to benefit himself. By the time of 2002, Kenner quietly moved away clean from the now-faded Death Row Records. Suge Knight officially sued David Kenner in 2004, marking their public and legal split. The lawsuit accused Kenner of alleged legal malpractice, breach of fiduciary duty, sale of Death Row assets without his approval, and profiting personally from actions taken while he was imprisoned. A decade before, shoulder to shoulder, 2 major players in Death Row Records, and now 2 enemies. Suge sees Kenner as a snake in a suit, and Kenner sees Suge as a reckless liability. Kenner walks away clean, and both Suge Knight and Death Row Records filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy in 2006. In 2015, Suge Knight's fatal hit-and-run incident happens, and David Kenner agreed to represent Suge Knight again, but later quit, and recently seek to remove himself from the possibility of a wrongful death retrial, which was rumored to be scheduled. Suge Knight recently spoke on Piers Morgan and accused David Kenner of involvement in the 1996 Tupac murder.